The much anticipated World Cup is upon us. So that means the equally anticipated return of soccer analyst and one of the great football gurus that we have, Andrea Soccer Canales, back on Race Talk Show. Andrea, welcome back. It's been way too overdue.
That's so kind of you, Ray. It's great to be back and talking the World Cup.
It's exciting. And, I'm so happy to have you back. One, because I'm so happy that since last time we spoke, you've become a mother. I'm so proud of you. So happy for you and the baby. And
Thank you.
And I'm also proud to know you as a friend because you not only are one of the great soccer analysts, but thinking in the grand tradition of people like Jamel Hill, you're one of the most woke women sports journalists in the game. So you're someone that's welcome here on many levels. Andrea, since your last appearance, there's been, and the exhilarating 2014 World Cup, it seems like it was just the other day, and now we have just days away from Russia 2018. So my first question to you is, we're days away from the World Cup. What's the biggest story you're following?
I really think that the 2018 World Cup, sorry, you referenced the former one, and I was thinking of it a little bit. But I really think that the story of this World Cup has to be Messi. Because, it really has come down to this is perhaps his last chance to cement that legacy as the great one and win that World Cup. And it's tricky because Russia, even though it's kind of Europe adjacent right there. I mean, it's always been that South American teams have trouble winning in Europe. It's almost always a European team that wins when the World Cup is played in Europe. But you might say that Germany broke that hex when they were a European team that won in South America. Right. So why can't it go the other way and a South American team win in Europe? Especially because Russia is basically such a huge thing onto its own. It's not really part of Europe. It's kind of part of Asia. It's just Russia. So everyone's looking at this as sort of a wild card World Cup. And likely Lionel Messi's last chance to grab that brass ring.
And
I think that's the biggest story.
No question. And I have a whole crew of Argentine soccer crazies, including my great friend Alex Easdale, the fact that Argentina to you is the center of the conversation is going to be music to their ears. But on some level, they're sort of before they go to bed at night, they are worrying about this, which is true. This is really an indictment on him. And I think about the analogies and the comparisons, Andrea. We think about basketball, this probably the greatest American sports debate in the country right now, which is LeBron versus Jordan, and thinking about where LeBron fits in the historic legacy of basketball after this latest valiant NBA championship loss, carrying a lottery team into the finals. That, it's very much analogous to where Messi's at. There's on some level, he's done everything else in the sport, the win the World Cup, but the ghosts of Maradona, the ghosts of Pelé, even on some level, kind of his stature as it relates to comparing him to Cristiano Ronaldo, he's approaching this. I mean, it really does come down in many ways, his legacy, to the next 3-4 weeks.
It's very true because, people can argue whatever they want about LeBron, but at least LeBron with the Heat and that championship where he basically, dragged Cleveland to the top. He did at least win a couple. You can't take that away from LeBron. But Messi hasn't won he hasn't won the World Cup. He hasn't won the Copa America, which is the other continental championship. He really hasn't won any international things since the Olympics. And, the Olympics matter. It mattered definitely to Brazil when Neymar finally won it in that country, because of all the things Brazil had won, they had never won the Olympics, shockingly enough. Now they have. But that's the kind of thing that now hangs over Messi's head. For all the titles that he's won with Barcelona, there's always going to be that argument, can he win without Barcelona? Other than that Olympic championship, which many people thought was, the dawning of all the things that Messi was going to win. But it turned out not to be. That he's come close, and it's still a great achievement to make a World Cup final. But when you don't actually win, and especially when so many expect you to win, because Maradona won, Pele won. I mean, they have World Cups beside their argument to be the greatest ever soccer player.
And not only World Cups, but moments where they, signature moments in those World Cups.
Moments where they took over. That's and right. Unfortunately, what we have of the moments in the last World Cup final especially is of that shot that Messi missed, where it seemed like it was a prime Messi moment, and it just went awry. And on the biggest stage, that's going to be the remembrance that a lot of people have of him if he's not able to turn it around to this World Cup.
And as some of my Messi apologists would say, well, if it wasn't Higuain, if he could just hit the ball relatively in the same straight direction, but that's another conversation.
It goes back to the idea that, that people forget that the first title that Argentina won wasn't with Maradona. It was, with, Kempes and Luque and Tarantini and that whole team from 78. So it's definitely a thing of, and even, you could even mention that Maradona had Kempes still around when he, helped Argentina to that title. But,
you're bringing back some great memories.
Sorry. No. Way back
no. Believe me, Mar. This is from my South Americans. They're just loving this.
Pippen and Pippen who?
No, I remember. What was that guy? Batistuta? They used to play with Maradona. Man, I remember those were incredible teams. And you listen.
They still had. I mean, and that's the thing. It's like people will say that about LeBron. How much has LeBron's greatness been blunted by having to deal with an injured Kevin Love? I'm sorry, I just have to say the idiocy of JR. I mean, really, there's that whole moment in that game one of the NBA Finals where even I think the most hardened Warriors fan had to feel for LeBron in that moment when his teammates let him down like that. The coach didn't call a timeout, and I mean, I don't know what the rest of the team was thinking, but definitely they didn't get a shot off when they could have won the game. Hill missed the free throw, and then JR just I don't know, his brain goes on blank sometimes.
J.R. Smith is the poster boy for the anti-cannabis movement. They're sort of being pushed to the side at this point. The wave in this country is pro-cannabis, but it's pretty clear that he may have been.
Maybe your brain does need to be fog-free for at least a little while. At least in those precious moments where a game is on the line and you have a chance to put some doubt in the mind of the Warriors and get your team a little bit ahead. And
Let me Andrea, let me ask you a hypothetical question, and I'm thinking also back to Ronaldo here. And that's hypothetical. Now, obviously, this is a long shot, but if hypothetically Ronaldo were to get Portugal to the World Cup, this following, of course, his third UEFA championship in a row, this following his Euro championship of a few years ago, could now obviously that would be an incredible performance with sort of a mid-tier team that he has. Would that be able to push him past Messi in your eyes, historically?
There's an argument to be made for that, for sure. But I do think you also have to look at the simple fact that, at least in the last World Cup, when Ronaldo was injured, his team kind of started playing better, maybe because they had to, There's just somehow it seems to be this sort of collective brain fog on Argentina where they watch Messi doing what Messi's doing, and they're literally like standing around ball watching him, and then the ball pops out to them and it's like they're not ready. And if Argentina is able to get over that, they as a team and Messi as an individual will go farther. But if it's going to be a thing of Portugal can take heart from what they did in the last World Cup, even while Ronaldo was injured. And, they did advance out of their group. And obviously, they won the Euros.
Yeah, we'll talk about Brazil in a second. I wanted to get your thoughts on America's team. Of course, I'm talking about Mexico coming into this tournament somewhat under the radar. relatively little drama, even though Chicharito had a kind of a wild birthday party the other day, which caught some attention. They're relatively healthy, but still have this monkey on their back, having never gotten past the round of 16. Andrea, you have covered El Tri in Mexican soccer for many years. What's your take on El Tri coming into this World Cup?
I'm a little worried about El Tri because I think that the situation with Osorio is one in which the fan base of El Tri has never warmed to him. He's a very analytical coach. He hasn't, and he focuses on what he's doing with the team and working with the team. And the players say that they appreciate that and they're behind him 100%, which is good. That's important. But I do think that a part of what powers the team is making a strong emotional connection with the fans. And if the fans don't believe in the coach, intellectually people can say, well, that shouldn't matter. The fans aren't playing. But, it's this little triangle of success that El Tri has had when the fans, the players, and the coach all believe. And that's what happened the last World Cup. I mean, we're talking about an El Tri team that was, 20 minutes away from elimination of even going to the 2014 World Cup. And this time they've finished first, and they've done well in many ways with Osorio. But in the warm-up games going to the World Cup, they haven't looked cohesive, and I think Osorio is too much in his head and tinkering too much with his formations. And I don't think the team is going into the World Cup with any momentum. And I think there's a chance that they may shockingly not advance out of the group, even though it's not even a very difficult group. Because El Tri has this thing that whenever they look too far beyond something, they stumble. Like back in 2002, I think when they played the U.S., they were thinking, oh, the U.S., that's no big deal. We can finally make El Quinto Partido. They're not Germany. They're not a good European team. And boom, they lost. And I think, honestly, last World Cup qualification, they hung on to El Chepo as coach for so long because they were thinking, there's no way that we're not going to qualify. We're El Gigante de CONCACAF. Por supuesto, of course we're going to qualify. And then they needed that, goal by Graham Susie of the U.S. to actually save them and get them to the World Cup, or get them to the playoff, which they won, and then they got to the 2014 World Cup. And I think that right now, they're so focused on Quinto Partido, they're not thinking about group play. Because the whole way that they advanced out of group play in the past was to focus on that, was to we gotta get out of the group, and then we're gonna win Quinto Partido. Which, I don't know if that's the place to focus, Quinto Partido. But, that's my worry about El Tri. If they're thinking too far ahead, they won't even do as well as they usually have done.
No, and on some level, I think about it because, they're almost a victim of the own passion for the sport. They have such an incredible fan base, a pretty good league. They've got more players playing in Europe and playing high level soccer than they have in the past. And, you could even argue that maybe they haven't overachieved, underachieved as much. I mean, if Chicharito's your highest profile player, he's had some moments in Europe, but he's at West Ham. He's not one of the real top teams at this point. And, they at least make the World Cup. I mean, Italy's not even in the World Cup, and the USA. So it's an interesting sort of dilemma. What do you think tactically, other than sort of this issue related to sort of shuffling the lineup, what do you think tactically is the key for El Tri going?
Well, like I said before, I think that part of it is for them to get that momentum and to get that focus. A lot of people have the game against Germany circled. I do think that Mexico often tends to rise to the level of their opponent or fall to the level of their opponent. So if they're able to get geared up for that game, Mexico almost every World Cup has this one game against an opponent which is they look amazing. And you can really see so many things in terms of the moves and the connection between the players that works so well, and that's great to see. And I think tactically it's really if they're willing to kind of take the lead of some of the the spark plugs of the team, like Tecatito. I really think that he has a chance to put the whole team sort of on this new page where they're doing creative attack, just really going forward, not just the pretty passes, which you're just like, but you're stuck in midfield, and that doesn't matter if you're not able to pull off those moves closer to the attacking zone. And but he's just constant attack, and he's creative and physical, and just so determined. I really see that as kind of the chance to be the engine of the team. I'm a little worried about some of the players that they seem to still be carrying, which more of do you really think Rafa Marquez should still be with the team? It's like, I understand him sort of a talisman. I could understand maybe if he was a goalkeeper and he didn't have to be expected to run the whole game. But, and also Diego Reyes, I'm not even sure that he's physically fit. And Osorio keeps on saying, like, well, one more game, we'll evaluate him. And I'm just like, wow, if he's not fit yet, maybe he's not going to be. But, so I'm a little worried about the defense here because we know Chicharito will, if he doesn't always put away his chances, he keeps trying, and he usually generates some. So he's experienced in the attack. And I really think that that's where Mexico looks good. But if their defense has holes, then, and whether through injury or lack of cohesion or just plain age, they start to give up a lot of goals in the back. It's going to be a difficult tournament for them.
Yeah, Rafa Marquez is probably one of my all-time favorite players, not only just being Tocayo, but, I know he's had some issues recently, personal issues more recently, but, I always thought he brought a lot of class to the sport and kind of represented Altri's sort of the essence throughout the years. But, he was old at the last World Cup, and one of the reasons they lost to Belgium was he was the one that ran out of gas. So I'm equally as concerned about some of the, and Altri's management, even they've had all these different managers, but they tend to hold on to the old school guys a little too long. And so there's kind of these ghosts, and that's one of the great things about the World Cup, right? Because I think about Brazil, which, save for the past, they should feel as good as anybody going into this tournament. They turned it around when they changed their coach. They've charged back up the table to qualify with ease at the end. The team is looking really good. Some of the pieces, like on the defensive end, have they're stronger in some of the weaker areas than they were in 2014. But it's almost like that big loss, 7-1 against Germany, sort of still hanging over their heads as they go into Russia. Another legacy moment for one of the world superstars, Neymar. So where do you see sort of Brazil's psychology going into this cup? Because the talent's there to win the whole thing. There's no question about that.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And you're right. We're really going to see how much resilience they had. Do you think that some of the legacy has lightened because of the Olympic win? Mm-hmm. Especially because that came on home soil. That was kind of healing for the nation of Brazil. Because that horrible loss obviously happened on home soil as well. But I also know that, Brazil has lost in finals before, the one they lost to France and stuff like that. And as a nation, they're remarkably, a little bit blasé about it because they always have this, and when I've been there and they've lost, kind of like, oh, well, there's still caipirinhas to drink and samba to dance, and maybe we'll win the next one, which is probably a fairly safe bet. And so I don't think it's like as psychologically scarring or as big a burden, for example, as the Argentines carry. And that's part of the reason that I think that's allowed Brazil to win more, that they've lightened the load on themselves and on their players by, still saying, oh, well, whatever, win or lose, we're going to party,
Yeah, and it's also not, for Neymar from a career trajectory perspective, it's not, he's got a few more World Cups.
Yes, exactly. He's already won the Olympics, the first one that, Brazil had ever won. So he's got a little bit of legacy squared away, and he's got more time, Yeah. And he kind of also wants to make his own way about things. I think he wants to go his own path. That's part of him going to PSG instead of staying at Barcelona and stuff. So He's really a little bit more of a free spirit, and I think he wears that pressure more lightly.
Yeah, and Neymar feels to me, kind of going back to this NBA analogy, like when LeBron came into the NBA and like Kobe and Duncan. So it's almost like he has the luxury of having Ronaldo and Messi kind of be the Kobe and Duncan of his era, kind of the older veterans that are really at the point of their career where they're solidifying and finalizing legacies. When he's not, because of his age, he's not necessarily compared to them, even though on some level he will be judged by those standards as he progresses. And I think having his own team, whether it's PSG or not being in Messi's shadow, there's some interesting parallels there. And you're listening to Andrea Canales, one of the great soccer analysts that we have. She's written for publications and global media outlets like ESPN. She's covered L3, she's covered World Cup, she's covered U.S. soccer, a great fan of the MLS. And when we bring back Andrea later in the summer, we could talk about kind of the state of U.S. Soccer and also what's happening with MLS. Andrea, we've touched on the kind of the three major American powers in the Americas: Mexico, Argentina, and Brazil. But we've got a handful of other teams representing our hemisphere from CONMEBOL and CONCACAF: Colombia, Peru, Uruguay, Costa Rica, and Panama, which I think is probably the most underrated sports story in the world. I mean, this country, I didn't even know they played a lot of soccer in Panama until about 5-6 years ago, mostly known as a baseball country historically, but an incredible run to the Cup. And, there's a lot of great storylines, as we know. Colombia's got some, and Uruguay have, some of the great stars of the game, highest profile guys: Suarez, Cavani, James Rodriguez, and Cuadrado, and a lot of talent on Colombia. Peru is another great Cinderella story. So what are what are your thoughts about the rest of the contingency from the Americas heading out to Russia?
Oh, I agree with you that, Panama is this really amazing, unheralded story. They've got this kind of golden generation of, Blas Perez and Jaime Pinedo, and they're all, a lot of them are kind of on the wrong side of 30, but that's, to me, like just the sweet, they've gone through so much of coming, like I said before, 20 minutes from the World Cup in 2014, and they couldn't hold on against the United States. And to get to the World Cup now is really just such an amazing accomplishment for Panama. And I think that is one of the underrated stories. To have Colombia, some of the talent that they have finally be able to play for them, because injuries have come up at the wrong time. And Cavani and Suarez, one last hurrah for Uruguay in the prime of their generation as well. I mean, we can expect fireworks and maybe some more violence. I don't know. Suarez is a little crazy on the field, so who knows if it'll be a handball or a bite or what have you. That's part of what makes the World Cup so dramatic and worth watching, whether or not the U.S. is playing. And I know there's some American fans that are disappointed, but I think everyone's going to get over it just to watch the games. I don't know if you've seen that Argentine commercial that has that couple arguing about whether or not they're going to go see a wedding while the World Cup is playing. even though Argentina's not playing on that day, he's like, "But it's Germany, Mexico. I want to be watching the World Cup." Because it does come only once every 4 years. And it is such an amazing sports spectacle that even if it's not your team, you want to watch and see if you might actually be there for that iconic moment that everyone's going to be talking about the next day.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see, Cavani and Suarez. I mean, they've on some levels, particularly Suarez, has proven himself in these situations. He's a big game player. So I think Uruguay, but like you said, I'm really looking at them because, they're, if anything, they're kind of usually their own worst enemy. Usually it's their own maniati guy that usually kind of stunts them in these moments. Not so much their play. They usually step it up. If anything, I remember they always overachieve on some level considering the population of that country. But but considering it's in Russia, I almost feel like it's an advantage to them on some level. It's kind of neutral territory and it's a shady place. They're kind of a shady team,
it's going to be kind of interesting to have their own. I mean, to me, it's analogous to South Korea, where nobody knew what to expect, but South Korea made it to the semifinals of that World Cup in 2002, and everybody was like, "What?" So who knows how far Russia's gonna? And like you said, it is kind of a shady place, and their fans are, in their own way, ruthless. So that's going to be sort of interesting, I think, for sure.
Do you think what do you think about the chemistry of with Colombia, of James Rodriguez and Falcao? I had a lot of friends I respect in 2014, know soccer a lot better than I do. That said, they actually thought it was a blessing that Falcao wasn't on the team in 2014. He didn't play because of injuries, because they thought he basically kind of plays a more selfish style, and the success of the team in Brazil 2014 really was because of the chemistry that obviously James was a big part of, and it allowed James to sort of take center stage. What do you think about the chemistry of the star talent on Colombia's team going into this tournament?
I do think that making his World Cup debut after he's been labeled as a phenom for so long, and now he's kind of a veteran already, hopefully humbled, Falcao, and brought him, to a place where, he's willing to play. Or this is what, all Colombian fans are hoping, right? That this is actually something that, the injuries have made him more I'm cognizant of, that time is precious, and that he may not get this World Cup chance again, and that it's time to really appreciate his teammates and actually play with them and not try to do it all himself. And but yeah, who knows? Maybe people are who they are and they can't help themselves, and that's what we're going to see. But I do think that Colombia has a chance to be one of those amazing teams, to have a kind of run that startles the world, and that neutral territory that we spoke of in terms of Russia not being a traditional European power could really give a lot of the South American teams a feeling of that they have a fair shot, and it's not going to be just home field advantage for all the European teams, and they may surprise and do much better than people expect.
Andrea,
but, at the same time, yeah. I have to say, and I feel silly doing it now because I had just sent off my written prediction that France was going to win it all, and then the U.S., which has like a team of, I think people are calling them teenagers, but a very young team, mostly like under 23, like plays them to a draw in their recent friendly. And so part of me was head slapping a little bit, going, "Oh my gosh, this is the team I picked to win the World Cup."
So you transitioned into my next question, Andrea. I wanted to get your predictions on the finals and who you think you'll win, and also if you can include in there any sort of a team that you think maybe will overachieve, that you're going to be, particularly from the Americas, that you think is someone to watch. But definitely let's. So you say France, and who else? Who do you think France would play in the finals in the World Cup this year? Is your prediction?
I picked France mostly because I think they're sort of the overlooked superstar at this point.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have their eyes on Germany, which I think is kind of running out of steam with Lowe and kind of that generational switch of the players they had from last time. And you're right, a lot of coaches, they hang on a little bit too long to their favorite players that they feel that they can count on. And that makes it tough, especially when a team has had a lot of success. And you think, oh, I don't want to get rid of this player because I've done so well with him. And it's hard to always be objective and realize, got to bring in new blood and give new opportunities. So I don't think Germany is going to have the success that they did before. But, maybe. I mean, Real Madrid won championships back-to-back, but it's a lot harder to do in the World Cup because there's a 4-year gap between the championships. No, so I don't think Germany's going to make it back to the final. And I do think that Brazil has the energy with Neymar and a younger group of players that are going to be in their prime at the World Cup. I do think that if Argentina gets energized around the idea that it's not only Messi's last chance, it may be their last chance. I think there's so much focus on Messi that too many players in Argentina don't think that way about themselves, about to really join in and think, this is a chance for a legacy to get that fourth World Cup championship for Argentina and really make the team stand out as a world power, to be closer to, because I can really say that they are a rival of, Brazil on the World Cup level. Because right now there's some gap between Germany and Brazil and the rest of the World Cup countries. No, the rest of the countries that have ever won a World Cup.
Sure. No,
but I think that's part of the thing for France, that they have been there before.
Yeah.
They've been to the final a couple of times. They won it once. It's not even so much that the same players are involved, but there's not that same pressure. And I don't think they have one player like Messi that the whole legacy question is surrounded around. So I think it's more of a team thing. And they have a pretty easy group, and if they're able to gel, I really see them gathering momentum and some of their younger players surprising the world.
Yeah, Pogba's more in the Neymar generation. He's still a young guy. He probably wouldn't even be... Probably the next World Cup, he'll be in his pure prime. And Griezmann is a great player, but he's not considered sort of like the face of the team. I feel, in a sense, bad for France because Lacazette got hurt, and I really like watching that guy play. He could score, and he's a lot of fun to watch. But France just has a lot of... If a football game broke out or another athletic event, they're probably the most purely athletic squad. They just have a lot of pure talent, a lot of great athletes. So that's certainly a strong pick. I'm going to make this prediction, and I'm going to say, just kind of my off-the-wall prediction, is that Uruguay is going to get further than Colombia and Argentina in this tournament. I don't think they'll, I could see them making a semifinal run. I just think this is their kind of vibe, and I think you're right. Argentina's got a lot of pressure because it's not only Messi, but my second favorite soccer analyst after you, Andrea, Tim Vickery, has been writing about this for years, that the Argentinian youth system is not what it used to be. It's not kind of stepping up to the European standards, and there's some holes. I mean, they've got, a handful of, not only Messi, but, international stars on the team, but there's some positions that they just haven't been able to replenish, and they're getting older. So you're right. This really is this could be the last chance for them to be, to potentially win a World Cup for quite some time.
Yeah. And like I said, to really establish Argentina's legacy as a true world rival, because otherwise it's going to fall back to this thing of, Argentina was a country that produced a couple of individually great players. It's not a great footballing country because it's a little bit too anonymous. It's, in terms of, it hasn't, shown that commitment as a country and culture or whatnot to really grab the stage at the world level and at the top international competitions. They've just fallen short too often. It's kind of like the reputation that England has every time it goes to penalties.
That's right. And you're listening to Andrea Soccer Canales, our soccer guru here on Ray's Talk Show. Andrea, I could talk to you all day about this. We've had so much fun with it. I'm going to be, as a Puerto Rican sports fan, first of all, I just love stoking these conversations, and I'm the guy on Facebook like pitting the Argentines against the Mexicans and the Colombians. It's a lot of fun, and we have a lot of great fun with it. And I'll be in touch with all of our friends around the country. We have so many people listening to this who are such a fan of yours that not only followed your journalism career but love following on Twitter for your sports knowledge, but also your political commentary and your passion for the things you care about. So we're definitely going to keep the conversation going. I wanted to give a shout out. It's the Argentina and Brazil and even Mexico are some of the most well-recognized countries in this sport. But, again, we talked about Panama, but Costa Rica, another very small country that consistently performs well. It got to the quarterfinals last year, got in the World Cup again. So much respect to our Ticos, have another strong team. Peru, I don't think had been in the World Cup since the 80s or the 70s.
Really,
so this is a great awesome story. Yeah, a great story.
For Peru to be back.
Yeah, great story, and we've got a lot of family and friends that are of Peruvian descent, and North Jersey is going to be on fire if you know about the Peruvian community in that part of the world. So they're gonna have a lot of fun watching this, and we're gonna be supporting our folks around the country and all the nations. We have Nigerian neighbors and folks from You know.
Oh man, isn't the Nigerian jersey amazing?
Oh, it is cool.
It's just like it's won like so many fans all around the world.
Yeah.
People are going on Ancestry.com going, I've got to be a little bit Nigerian. Close enough.
Yeah. No, and a lot of talent too. A lot of talent.
Yeah,
Victor Moses
do.
and those
They
guys.
do.
Very good team. Very good team.
It's,
So, and we didn't give a chance to Mo Salah and Egypt and that great story and kind of what that means for the continent in the Arab world. So a lot of great storylines. Andrea Canales, you're always a pleasure to have on the show. Anything else you'd like to share with our Race Talk Show listeners?
I just think that it's going to be party time for so many people. In some ways, you know, the U.S. being out of the World Cup means that American fans can actually just relax and kind of like you were saying, what we as Puerto Ricans do when we tease sometimes our South American friends, we can be objective enough to enjoy it without like bleeding inside. And have fun with it, and yeah, maybe be a little bit of eso about, you know, hey, do you think Suarez is going to bite anyone in this one? Or, you know, just the fun little comments that we can make because we're just a little bit outside and once removed from it. But also it gives everyone an opportunity to follow their heart, whether that's the ticos and the pura vida, or, you know, you're going to lift a glass of mezcal to the Peruvians or what have you. You know, eat your tacos and cheer for El Tri and their quest of the Quinto Partido. It's going to be an awesome World Cup. And, you know, whether Messi makes his legacy or whatever goes down, it's going to be something that everyone will, at some level, you know, remember and talk about for years to come. There's going to be the unexpectedly good matches, the snoozers until the last moment. And it's the world's greatest sporting spectacle for a reason.
Yeah, it's going to be very exciting. Andrea, let people know where they can follow you on social media. I know you're a great Twitter follow, so we can keep the conversation going throughout the World Cup and beyond.
Yeah, I'm still on Twitter, and I might still be doing an article here and there. And I'm always happy to come on your show so people can pick up my insights from there. On Twitter, I'm Soccer Canales. And I still tweet about soccer, although you're right, with the world the way it is today, I mentioned a lot of other stuff as now, because, you know, those are just things that move me, and I got to have my say on some things.
Well, Andrea, as we say here on Race Talk Show, the podcast that won't be silenced, we never want Andrea Canales silenced. Thank you so much for your commentary, your passion, and all the best to the family, and we'll be in touch. We'll be tweeting at you, Andrea. Our crew is going to be tapping your knowledge throughout the World Cup. Thank you again for joining the show.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Ray. Have an awesome World Cup, and take care.
Thank you, Andrea. Thanks again.